With Islam moving up to 170 to face JDM, a lot of people are saying that he was running away from Topuria. I believe that going up to 170 is a bigger challenge for Islam than staying and fighting another featherweight. What are your thoughts regarding that?
I'm a huge fan of Chael Sonnen, and I think he is definitely capitalizing on the press and opportunity he has right now, where he's got some headlines calling uh, Islam cowardice for moving up. However, I think his quote is being taken very much out of context, and instead of correcting people, I think he is just taking this interpretation that people have of his quote, and he is deciding to lean into it harder. Right? The quote that Chael Sonnen said, and this I'm more prone to agree with than some of the other things that are being tossed around right now. But Chael Sonnen's quote said something to the effect of you moving up only when the person that you refuse to fight at the top of your division has left is not brave, it's cowardice, something like that.
Yeah.
People interpreted that as him leaving Ilia Topuria coming up at the top of his division. What Chael meant, I believe, and very clearly, if you look at the quote, I'll try to pull it up maybe as we're talking about it more directly, is more so on Islam being unwilling to fight Bilal. That's what Chael was talking about. That it's you waiting until the guy who is at the top of the division, and it's really now in hindsight, it's easy for us to be like, well, he wasn't even that good anyways. It was Bilal, what's his name, and JDM walked through him clearly, right? But like prior to that fight, nobody thought Bilal was after the fight with Leon. It was who's going to stop Bilal. That was the thing. People didn't. Easy for us to talk about it now and be like, yeah, Bilal was never that good anyways because he's so easy to hate. But Bilal was, by everybody else's opinions, by most of the fan base, the public, a top contender and a huge problem and a huge challenge and a threat to anybody in the division. So Chael's comment that Islam waiting for that guy who we've all determined is hard or impossible to beat, very difficult, waiting for him to leave to then decide to move up and fight, that is cowardice, is what Chael's comment was you're denying fighting Bilal on some brotherhood, we train together thing, whatever, right? Either, however you spin it, the fact of the matter is that you are unwilling to fight the guy who was at the top of the division. You will only move up once there is somebody else who is not currently the guy at the top of the division. And that in itself being cowardice, I don't agree with entirely, but I'm more prone to agree with than this other narrative that's being spun that it's cowardice to leave lightweight because Ilia Topuria is coming up. I do not think Islam is scared of Ilia Topuria in the slightest. I think that he wants to achieve champ. I think he's been talking about that for a long time. He's not going to get the champ thing. He'll be able to have, the opportunity to be a champion in two different weight divisions and be a double champ or whatever, right? But that was his intention the entire time. It was as soon as Bilal is gone, I am there. That has been Islam's intention that he has vocalized very clearly the entire time. So timing unfortunate with this being right when Ilia wants to move up, right? But is Ilia moving up to chase Islam, or is Ilia moving up to chase the belt, right? Because he's now turning a narrative of Islam's scared of me and he's running away from me. Ilia was coming up because he said, his coaches said, he can't make 145 anymore. That's why Ilia's moving up, not because he's trying to hunt down the pound for pound. Easy for you to go paint that picture now that you're definitely not fighting the pound for pound. Easy for you to be like, oh yeah, he's scared of me, man. I was going to take that guy, no problem. You weren't moving up in hopes to fight Islam. You're moving up because you, as a professional athlete, can no longer make the weight in the class that you're the champion of. That's not a positive. Him moving up is not on the heels of greatness. It's the opposite. He cannot perform at the weight that he's in, and there's evidence of this. He has a bout at 155 against Jai Herbert randomly in the middle of his career. That has to be, you can only assume, for the same reasons. He's had a hard time making 145, but he's been able to dominate there. And, he's not like, I'm done with 145 now. Who's next? Islam, I'm coming for you. It came off of his coaches saying he cannot do it. He wasn't stripped. He vacated because whatever is next for him maybe 155, maybe 170, maybe no longer a career in mixed martial arts. He cannot make the weight of 145 anymore, so he has to move up. And now there's this dialogue of Islam's running away from him and he's coming to chase Islam. I would implore people to look at the facts of how we got here and remember the history that Islam Makhachev, the pound for pound number one in the world, who was not afraid to fight Alexander Volkanovski, who was previously the number one twice, right? Two times. One of them on short notice. People give a lot of that to Volk. They give a lot of the credit on Volk's fight against Islam, the second one, short notice to Volk. It is just as, to me, impressive for Islam to still take that fight on short notice. You've been training to fight Charles Oliveira, an incredibly different fight style than Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah.
Arguably somebody who you walked through much easier than your first fight with Volkanovski, right? On full camp. You were finding out, I think what was like 2 weeks before is when Volk took the fight. 2 weeks in advance. Hey, your toughest fight that you've had yet, you're about to rematch that instead. You've got much more to lose. Volk, puts a lot less at stake there. His belt's not on the line, right? He's already lost once. So like the moral defeat and impact to his stock of losing a second time, real minimal, right? He also has the guys that he could fall under of, he took it on short notice. He has a lot less at stake there taking that second fight against Islam than Islam had accepting it against Volk. So I think that people really get confused with accepting who Islam is. He is that guy. I admittedly have not always been a fan of him, but it's really hard to not recognize the greatness in Islam Makhachev.
For sure. And you know what? It's respectable to think that the reason why Islam didn't want to move up is because he just didn't want to put his boy in a spot where he was beating him and taking his belt. But this is what we all have to think about now. You can't duck Bilal anymore, because what happens when you go, and whether you win or lose, if you win, maybe you prolong it a little bit. But if you go in there and you lose against JDM, why wouldn't the promotion just match you up against Bilal Muhammad?
Yeah. How do you avoid that? That's a great question. They have not addressed that.
I feel like these guys, they're both at the top, and I think they're both in the primes of their career. Bilal's a little bit older, but he's still, I think, in the prime of his fighting career. He looked great against JDM. I think these guys are destined to meet each other in the cage at some point.
Both of them have explicitly said that they wouldn't. I don't know if it happens. I think a more likely outcome is that Bilal, if he finds himself in championship contention again, I think that he moves divisions. I think maybe this loss might be enough for him to move divisions and go a little bit heavier, which I don't think he fares well in going a little bit heavier either, by the way. I think that Bilal's welterweight is where Bilal belongs. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole landscape of welterweight right now is really interesting. I mean, I would argue that welterweight's probably the most exciting, but also the most tough division right now, just because of all the young guys that are coming up. We now have Michael Morales, we have Joaquin Buckley, we have Shavkat, we've got Ian Gary. I mean, it's going to be a tough climb back to the top for Bilal, and I just feel like if Islam goes in there and loses against JDM, like, that might just be a fight that has to happen.
I think the UFC will avoid trying to put together that fight as much as they can, as much as the fans want it. Guys like Khabib, who are behind the scenes in these decision makings, and Islam, this isn't a act or a show for the Dagestani guys, right? They're not doing it for money. When they say something and they put their word on something, they mean it, and they stand behind it indefinitely. And Khabib won't allow for that fight to happen. I think Islam was way more willing than he presented in media. I think Khabib held that fight back, and I think he will do it again. I think that the UFC knows that and will not try to create a position where those two guys have to tee up against each other kind of ever again. But you bring up a great point. Everyone is already so decided that, I mean, at least I haven't given it much thought. Islam's going to win, Ilia's going to win. What happens if that's not the case? What happens if one or both of those guys lose? What does that mean for those divisions next?
It's all very positive things, I would say, for the divisions respectively, just because whether they win or lose, they're there now, and there's a ton of fun fight matchups. But yeah, it'll be curious. I'd be interested to see, bro, because I know that Bilal trains with them a little bit, but like, make no mistake, Bilal came up from Chicago, dude. Like, he's not one of Habib's
Yeah,
day one
yeah.
Dagestani guys that's been grinding in the trenches with him since they were knee high to a grasshopper. Like, he's a little bit. I don't want to say newer with him. I know he's been around Habib for a while now, but like,
No,
I
you're
don't.
100% correct though. I think that Khabib needs to, yeah, get with the program at one point. I mean, and look at what it's done already. How much it's held up so far. If Khabib had become, hey, Bilal, it's been great helping you out and training with you. I think they're probably both Muslim. I have to guess probably why this relationship has worked out the way that it has. I'm not sure. Uh, I know Khabib is. I don't know if Bilal is. Uh, However, we got to train here. It looks like we're probably going to be, teeing up against each other soon enough via Islam. I don't want to keep, putting you in a position where whatever, to some effect, kick him out of the camp, kick him out of the gym, and move along and keep right with the guys that are from Dagestan because he is effectively held back Islam from what his number one goal he's communicated was, which was to be champ. He'll be happy to be a double champ, but he wanted to be champ. He wanted to hold both belts at the same time. Yeah, the UFC is moving away from this. However, following the Moicano fight, if Islam immediately had called for a fight against Bilal to go champ, I think the UFC would have made it. I think they would have let that happen if he had any other post-fight press conference besides, "I'll wait," because that's what he did. He said, "I'll wait. I can't fight Bilal, so I'll wait." And
Yeah,
I found the exact quote from Chael Sonnen, by the way, too, and I think it validates what I was saying. The bottom line is, this is Chael Sonnen's quote. The bottom line is, at Islam, you entered a division openly that you said you wouldn't face one of the top guys. That's not a sign of courage. That's a sign of cowardice. I don't love the idea. That's Chael Sonnen's quote. And people have interpreted that to mean Ilia. And Chael Sonnen has taken advantage of that because that's making more headlines right now than what he actually meant. So he's riding with it. But if you hear it directly, the bottom line is you enter a division you said you wouldn't face one of the top guys. He didn't. He was the reigning champ of lightweight. He didn't enter that division. He entered welterweight. That's the division that he entered. And he came in entering saying, "I will not fight Bilal. I will not fight one of the top guys." Shell then makes the point to say that is a sign of cowardice, not courage. It's not so brave that you're willing to move up in weight. If there is this asterisk that only under the pretense, "I won't fight the current champ," which is what it was. And say what you want. That is exactly how the situation unfolded. I'll never say that Islam is a coward or he's acting, in a way that's cowardice, but that
right.
is exactly how that went down.
Yeah, well, for those who know what they're watching, we know that Islam is a dominant fighter and a dominant champion, but the problem is if he doesn't figure out a way to take control over his own career, in the end, there's going to be a lot of asterisks around the fighting career of Islam Makhachev, from fighting a bunch of featherweights to not wanting to fight the champion at 170. So I'd like to see him kind of just take control of his career. But there's a bunch of fun matchups coming up. Maybe some we don't agree with. Maybe some that we do. Some that we look forward to. And we got to talk about what we believe the rest of the year holds as far as the card. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Is there anything else you would like to say before we head out?
Let me ask you one more thing before we get off.
Sure.
Ilia Islam. Do you think that fight still happens? If so, how does it go down? What leads up to it? When does it happen?
I would
With
say,
another follow-up question. I got one more follow-up to that too.
okay.
Paint me the picture of how we get there. Once we're there, is that bigger than Khabib and Conor? Can it be built up to be as big as Khabib and Conor?
That's a great question. I would say this. No. And the reason I say that is because there's just no way Ilya is going to go up to 170. He's too small. And I think, when guys move up a weight class, typically they perform better, and I think we'll see that from Ilia. But I think we're going to realize just how small Ilia is whenever he moves up. If there was ever going to be somebody who captured a third belt, it would have been McGregor. I think he would have had a legitimate shot against Tyrone Woodley back in the day. I mean, bro, these guys are like 6'3", and I'm not talking about Jai Herberts, these little small frames. I'm talking about big boys that could fight at middleweight, maybe even light heavyweight, depending on who the person is. So unless Islam just gets dogged out at 170 and gets sent packing back to 155, which that's not going to happen. He's going to be competitive at 170, and he might just win a belt at 170. So I don't see that fight happening now. If there was some way that it did, right? I mean, Ilia runs through 155 and Islam runs through 170. Because of the storyline all along for the two, if we fast forward a year and a half, 2 years from now, that fight will be massive. And I think could be probably the biggest fight of all time. But it's
bigger than Khabib and Conor?
Yeah, but it's a lot of ifs there.
A lot of things have to happen for us to get there. Yeah.
A lot of things and a lot of time. The stuff with Khabib and Conor, like that took a lot of time for that to become the fight that it was. A lot of things happened. So
I'll tell you this. I don't know if you know this. This is part of why I ask. Ilia's brother, who also fights in the UFC now, tweeted out, I think two or 3 days ago, that Ilia's plan is to move up to 170 once he's captured the 155 belt and can get some fights done. He has the intention and the desire to become the first 3-division champ. This is now information out.
Yeah, and that's a great desire to have, but the problem is he's going to get beat up at 155. And maybe I'll leave my words there, but I just don't I don't see him getting past Oliveira. I'm being completely honest. I mean,
you think Charles Oliveira beats Ilia Topuria?
I think he probably beats him up bad, bro.
Wow. No diff.
I think he beats up Ilia bad.
Give me round and method.
Oh man,
I'm assuming you're saying it's finishes, right? Or does it go to decision?
I would say this fight, somebody's going to get finished. So the problem is Charles always gets caught, but he has probably the best recovery out of any fighter on the roster. At least he's right there up with him. The problem is if you get caught flush by Ilia Topuria, you might not recover from it. But I don't know. I go back to the size. I think that he is going to find a lot of difficulty with these bigger frame guys. And a guy like Charles, he's just good everywhere, except for the head movement. That's the one thing I don't like about Charles. But I think it's going to be too much pressure. I think he's going to be too strong. And I could see him taking Ilia down and beating him up on the ground. I could see him probably submission. But, I mean, Charles has beaten up everybody. He's been beaten up by everybody, but he's like beating everybody up just a little bit more, if you know what I mean. I don't know. I'm going off the fact that Ilia Topuria has never really faced a top contender lightweight. I favor Islam going up to 170, having success more than Ilia going up to 155. I think he'll do okay. I don't think he's going to have this crazy run and then go try to run to 170. I just don't see it.
Do you think, what if you were to put Volk against Charles? How do you think that goes down? This is where I find myself.
You know what? I like Volk against all the top 155ers. I like it to be competitive. I don't know. Just
what do you think? Do you think 10 pounds? Because it's one of the smallest increases in weight in the UFC. 10 pounds, small difference. 145s and 155s are real similar guys, right? You think that 10 pounds makes a difference for your chin?
Potentially. I think the storyline we're more likely to see than Ilia running to 170 is Volk winning a couple more fights at featherweight and going up to fight Ilia and get that win back. I think that's much more likely.
Okay, I like that. I like the rematch at 155 with Volk. I like that a lot. I'll tell you this. I just looked it up because I know you're wanting to get off here. I could go for 4 more hours, so I'll let you go. But I wanted to include one more stat for you. I looked this up because I was curious. I thought this was the case, but I was curious. Ilia Topuria has been knocked down one time in his entire career.
Jai
That
Herbert,
one
right?
time was by Jai Herbert at 155. That's another thing that I think people aren't really considering is can he take them from guys at 155, right? Because it's that there is some more power behind the like there's 155,
Look,
you got some bigger guys.
it. I think a lot's going to be exposed soon, and we'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. We'll see exactly what the case is. But he's being compared to Connor. Connor beat Aldo coming off of like 10 years of whooping everybody's ass, whereas you just can't compare it. Ilya beat Volk coming off of two bad losses from Islam, older Volk. And I'm sorry, I just don't see Volk being as dominant in his prime as Jose was. And then just what Connor was able to do, nobody will ever be able to do that again. It's a fake duplicate. It's a poor imitation. And I think a lot is going to be exposed when he moves to 155.
I like it. I like the Ilya hate. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, bro. Well, I'm about to bounce from off here, man. It was good having you on. Let's do it sometime soon, okay?
100%. Absolutely.